Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. Today I have a mixed media tutorial for you. I created this lovely home decor piece using an 8x8 cradled wood panel and napkins. Yes, a napkin was used to create that. So here is the star stencil and the napkin that I used with the finished product. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did creating it. So there's the cradled wood panel. This is an 8x8. I've given it a coat of gesso to prep it. And now I'm going to prep the napkin. So first step, this napkin is called Spring Melody, and you can get this from NINNYSNAPKINS. She also has the TCW stencils. So check it out. There's a link in the description box. So first off, I removed the 2 plies of white napkin from it. Then I'm using the liner brush to water cut. You've seen me doing this before, so I didn't do this in this video, but I'll put a link to the video where I give napkin 101. So I cut out a lot of the pieces in the napkin because I want to play with it and figure out the composition. I'm also figuring out which substrate I want. I had a 10 by 10 square. I had a 8 by 10. I have an 11 by 14, and I played with the composition to find one that fits best. The scale of your focal image and your stenciling needs to match your background. So I looked at the napkin and I chose, there's a blue and kind of a violet plummy color. And I grabbed my Prussian blue, and the colors that I used were cobalt violet hue, which is kind of like deep violet from the Liquitex brand, and violet oxide, which is deep violet with a brown undertone. And I matched it to the colors in the napkin. Sometimes you're going to have to mix colors that you have to get the right tone. Don't be afraid to do that, to take your time. I spent an awful lot of time off camera on this, figuring out what I was going to do and how I was going to do it and testing ideas. And I just want to be very upfront about that. There's a lot behind the scenes. So I did a coat of gesso on here again because I wanted a wet surface, and I'm kind of dry brushing those colors onto this. I want to get all the colors that are in the napkin to show up in the background so everything looks like it belongs. And I'm doing kind of a wash and a dry brush, and I add color, and then I put gesso on, and I brush it out, and then I go back and forth adding and deleting till I get it how I like it. So don't be afraid to play. Now, if your paint is kind of getting sticky, stop, let it dry, and then come back once it's dry, and then you can, if you need to, even just put another coat of gesso on top of it and start over if it goes terribly awry. No fear. If you try something and it doesn't work, you can always take it back, especially at this stage because there's really nothing there. I'm adding some of that color, mixing it with my fingers, mixing it just to get. I'm trying to figure out what I like, and I find sometimes you can think about it all you want. So here I'm using a piece of saran wrap and those same colors, and I'm using it as a stamp to get kind of that blotchy effect. Just another way to make marks on your background. And I'm using again that blue and both of those violets. If you get a part that's too dark, too up forward, just take some gesso and cover it up. Now I'm testing the colors, and I really like, you see how the colors really match the napkin? And I kept taking the napkin and looking and testing and, going back and forth till I got what I liked. And I obviously didn't like everything I saw. I didn't like the texture too much from the saran wrap because I'm achieving a much softer look by brushing the gesso and the colors on top. And that's what I mean about you can always correct if it doesn't work. But if you don't try something new every once in a while, you're never going to grow and stretch. So take the chance. There it got too dark, so I'm adding some light colors. And sometimes you don't know exactly where you're going. So as the page or the canvas evolves, your ideas come together. Speaking of pages, this can be done as an art journal page. I've just chosen it to be on this substrate because I love this napkin so much. I thought this would make a lovely home decor piece. So I'm placing the napkin where I want it, and I've kind of decided to move it up, but I don't want the script stamp underneath the bird or really underneath too much of the flowers because I want to preserve how beautiful they are. So this gesso is just store brand economy gesso, but over time it transformed and got much thicker. And now I absolutely love it. In fact, I bought more with the hopes of it getting thicker. You can buy thick gesso, and if you don't want to buy something extra, you can take some of your regular gesso and mix it with modeling paste, and it'll get to that halfway in between texture. Now, when I started this, my plan was where the bird was kind of in the center, I was not going to put a whole lot of stenciling. I just wanted it on around the edges. You will see that I changed my mind because that just looked odd to me. And I'm just pushing this gesso, and I'm not too worried if it seeps under and if it's not perfect because I do want that grungy look. And I keep going back and testing my focal image on there. Where do I want to add this? I'm composing the canvas as I go. So there you can see that where before there was a big open area that wasn't stenciled, here I now have that stencil. And I love all that stencil work. That texture is absolutely gorgeous. That scroll work stencil from the Crafters Workshop, yum. So now I'm putting matte medium underneath. I'm lifting up the napkin and then putting it underneath and then putting some on top and just very gently decoupaging the napkin down. And the napkin does get brighter, especially when you have such a light background, as you see I'm using here. But the napkin does get very fragile, so you have to be very gentle. I'm using a flat brush, but it has softer bristles. And I'm not using my usual gunked up gel medium adhesive brush. I do use a better brush for this because I don't want to rip the napkin. Now you saw me place the sentiment where I'm going to put it so I get the final positioning of the focal image because that works together. So of course, off camera, out of time, I played around with that. Now I had some other elements that I had cut out. They don't fit on this 8x8. Now I cut out the sentiment. Now that I know the size that works and everything, that played with the fonts, I printed it on tissue paper. And you saw that I taped a piece of tissue paper into the middle of a copy paper, and then I fed that through my laser printer. And now I just cut it out. And I printed off 3 because other times when I put it off, sometimes it crinkles the paper a little bit. And then I end up having to print it again. This time I got 3 perfect copies. Now the tissue paper, once you put the matte medium on, it dries translucent just like the napkin. but I am cutting off any excess. Now, with the tissue paper, this is, as I said, dollar store tissue paper. It does have one side is slightly shiny and the other side is more matte. I try to remember to print on the side that is not shiny. It decoupages and goes a little bit more translucent than the other one. You could do both without too much problem, especially on a light background like this. But to hedge your bets, try to do it on the more matte side. So again, I'm decoupaging this down with the matte medium, putting that medium underneath and on top. And as you can see, I'm going right over top of the gessoed stenciled surface, the texture that's there, without any trouble. And I just push it into the texture. So it all looks like it belongs and is one. I make my own sentiments by playing with word art and different fonts on my computer. If you're interested in buying some of my sentiment packs, just email me at creativekatie.com, at creativekatie@gmail.com, sorry. Now I want a little more color in the background, and I play with this a lot. I'm rubbing some of the plum color on there. I go later on, you're going to see me add more color. If it gets too colored, I spray rubbing alcohol on a towel and I rub, it takes off the acrylic paint, taking it back to white. So I play a lot. I'm tweaking the look. Now I want the focal image to stand out a little bit more. So I am doing a bit of a wash and shading with the same colors that I see there with my angle brush. And I'm basically doing the floating acrylic technique and just adding that light wash of color. Other times when I've painted flowers to get the painterly look, I use very thick paint and you're adding to this. That is not what I'm doing here. Here it's more of a wash or just a very light shading. I just want those colors to pop. I want my focal image to be the predominant thing that you see. And I hope you see the difference. So I've added some of the colors, the pink, and the blue. And then I come in with black, and I'm going to add some black to that as well. And that just gives some definition to the composition, I guess. There's the black, and you can see just adds, and it's very sparingly, the floating acrylic technique, highlighting, and I really like how it made those branches pop, and I just a little bit here and there. Now I'm using a makeup sponge and the black paint, and I'm just edging the wood panel. I also painted the sides black because it went well, and I think it's the black in the sentiment that just requires some other black, and I kind of shade around so it frames the wood panel. Now my background got a little light. Some of that color, I didn't see enough of the color peeking through to tie in with the focal image. So I am taking some of those same colors, the blue and the violet, and just thinning it out and touching it here and there just to add that color to the background. I liked the white stenciling. As you can see, I took off all the color, but I did want a little more of that color. I come in and I splatter with that color just to introduce that. I thought maybe that will give me enough color to tie in and get rid of some of the whiteness. If it splatters in a place you don't like or makes a mess, you can come in with a baby wipe and get rid of it. Then I wanted to grunge it up a little bit. And so I put some black acrylic paint and I tap, tap, tap on the pad of my finger, and I'm just ever so gently rubbing on the high points. I don't want it everywhere, but it brings out the texture, adds another dimension to the finished piece. I absolutely love this piece and I hope you do too. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, check out Ninny's Napkins and TCW. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye.